discussion with Adrian Plank and David Tyson Smith, which was great. Today we've got Doug Mann. Doug was elected in 2022, and he's a former high school teacher, and he currently is working as a civil rights attorney. And he lives in Columbia with his wife, Adrienne, and his dog, Shuri. Hopefully I said that right. And then let me pull up Kathy's. And then we've also got Kathy Steinhoff. She's District 45. She was also elected in November 22, like Doug. Prior to serving in the legislature, she taught math in Columbia Public Schools for 34 years, including my oldest son. He was in her last class. She's a national board certified teacher and has all sorts of wonderful honors that she's received. She was extensively involved with the NEA. She was born in St. Louis, but she now lives here in Columbia with her husband, and she's a mom and a grandmom and a longtime member of Our Lady of Lourdes Parish. I didn't know that. So with that, I am going to pass off to Doug and Kathy. I think the invitation, as I understand it, was to just come and talk about bills you'd pre-filed. Kathy, I know you probably got your shtick together because you've got an event coming up on the 19th. Feel free to plug that. But I think I'm going to start with you and then let you say your bit, and then we'll pass over to Doug and let him talk about his bit, and then maybe we could field some questions. Does that sound all right? Okay, let's do that. And feel free to pop questions in the chat too, and I'll keep an eye on it if you're listening and think of one.
Thank you for having us. This is a really great opportunity. And you're right, I do have an event on Tuesday night that of course you all are invited to. It is at the library, and it's called a free session information session. And it's kind of divided into three parts. The first part you're probably going to get today, and that is what bills I plan to file. And then there will be a part about what I kind of expect to happen, just if I look at my crystal ball. And then at the end on Tuesday night, I'll be talking about how you can stay more involved. But like I said, a third of it you're probably going to get right now. So feel free to skip it if you feel satisfied from that. So the question was about bills that I plan to file. I have not filed any yet. Many of them are in the works right now, and I will put the disclaimer out there that lots of things could change between me talking to you now and actually filing it. So it's possible some of them won't get filed because maybe I'll meet some resistance or find out some information in the meantime. But most of these are pretty much in the works. I'll also say that several of them have a lot of detail to them, and I don't want to bore you with detail you're not interested in. So I'll try to just give an overview, and then during the question part, if you all want more details, I'll be happy to give them. There are 5 that I'm working on. 3 are in the area of education, no surprise. 1 is a pie in the sky foundation formula fix. So the foundation formula is the way that school districts receive their state aid. And it's calculated on a lot of different variables. That's why it's called a formula. But many of those, the constants in the formula are very outdated. So this would be a bill that I say pie in the sky because it has a very little chance of ever going anywhere because it would be too expensive to fund. But it's looking at all the different places that I think were outdated. I have another bill that I'm filing that has to do with Career Ladder. Career Ladder is a mechanism that was created a long time ago for teachers to be able to earn more money for doing more work. And 2 years ago, when they were looking at how to use state funds to recruit and retain teachers, they wanted to put some money in that retainment piece, but they didn't really have a vehicle for how to get the money to the school districts. And somebody suggested, well, what if we just reopen Career Ladder, which is what they did. So there is state money out there to incentivize teachers, to stay, as the way I look at it. But the way that it is, they have to do more work to get the money. So what I call this is the gutting the career ladder. And that is basically taking out all those requirements and just finding a way to funnel the money straight to them. I feel like we're in a different time. It's not a, can you do more to get more? Right now, it should be a thank you for all you're doing. The third one that has to do with education has to do with, people call it YCDD. It's Young Child Developmental Delay. It's in the field of special education, and it's for our earliest learners. So when a child ages 3 to 5 exhibit some delays, they can receive this diagnosis without having a specific diagnosis the way a student with an IEP would have. But it's a federal program, but states can decide when that sunsets. And right now it is, students can't carry that diagnosis past the end of their kindergarten year. So entering first grade, if they're a special ed student, they have to have an IEP. And what I am trying to do with this bill is to extend that to the beginning of second grade to make that just a little easier on students and families and schools. So those are the three education ones. I hope I'm not just filling your brain with all kinds of crazy stuff. The other ones are a little quicker. One is on safe gun storage. So we know that we have a huge problem with gun violence. This is maybe like a butterfly Band-Aid on that. It's really not going to probably make much of a difference, and it probably won't be heard by anyone. But if implemented, it could be the world to somebody who could save a life of somebody meaningful to them. What I'm trying to do is pull language from the NRA about gun storage, and put that into statute. So that's kind of my twist on how to maybe have more people listen to it. And then the last one has to do with voting rights. Last year, I filed a bill that would allow high school age students and excused, would allow them an excused absence from school on election day to vote. It would be like a 2 hours. I had some specifics to it, but I want to file that again, but expand some provisions that can help some of our college age students have better access to voting. And I'm talking with a lot of people about that. I'm not really quite sure where we're going to land, but we're looking at things like student IDs and having universities allow easier access for our clerks to be able to have polling places there, particularly for the early voting. So those are my 5 in a nutshell. And I don't know, I can't remember, Sarah, did you say you'd rather have Doug present his, or should I open for questions?
I'm Switzerland on that. I was going to wait till the end, but if anybody's got a question that you just can't wait to ask, we could do it now.
Okay, and feel free to cut us off for time if, to be fair.
I think we're doing good. It's only 10 after.
Okay.
So let's hand off to Doug, and then there might be questions that both of you want to answer. That's the same question. So Doug, why don't you take it away and talk about some of your plans for next session?
Awesome. So first of all, thank you for having us. I think this is really important to, get this information out there early before session. So I have 7 bills that I am going to be filing, or I should say at least 7. That could change, but there are 7 right now that are sitting on my desk in Jeff City waiting to be signed and filed. 4 of which are the bills that I filed last year, 3 of which are new. So I'll just give a quick overview and reminder of what I filed last year, and then talk a little bit more in depth about the 3 new ones. The first one from last year would be a undo of SB 43 from 2017, and a reissuing of the Missouri Fair Housing Act. So it's essentially SB 43 in 2017 altered the Missouri Human Rights Act, making it harder for people to advocate for their rights when their rights have been violated by an employer or public accommodations individual or organization. So essentially taking away the caps and making it easier for people to sue businesses, sue their employers if their rights are violated. And then the Fair Housing Act would bring Missouri back into compliance with the Federal Fair Housing Act, which would bring more federal dollars into the state while also allowing individuals to access housing. The next is my needle exchange program bill, essentially allowing healthcare facilities and other organizations to have needle exchange programs without fear of being prosecuted. The next one is allowing for the teaching of LGBTQ history in our schools. Obviously, that is allowed right now, but given the climate, it's important that we protect those teachers that are teaching those things in our schools. The other one is a bill that would allow motorcycle riders to use certain maneuvers to protect themselves from getting rear-ended in traffic. That was something that a group of personal injury attorneys brought to my attention because they were getting a lot of motorcyclists getting rear-ended, and it would help with them. So those are the ones that I filed last year that I'm going to be refiling. The new ones, the first one deals with opioid overdose rescue kits. So I was approached by some students at Mizzou who felt as though there weren't enough rescue kits available or readily available to them on campus. So I did some research, found a bill that actually passed in Arkansas that requires rescue kits to be available in dorms, meal halls, athletic facilities, etc. If anyone knows anything about opioid overdoses, a minute can be the difference between life and death for an individual. So having those rescue kits just at like a health center or at safety, like public safety, might not be enough. It might not be quick enough for individuals. And having those rescue kits available in the dorms could be a thing that saves a person's life. The next one is a firearms bill. It's a bill that Representative Patty Lewis is also filing. And it's called Donna's Law. It's passed in several states already, and essentially what it is a voluntary do not sell list law. So if an individual is having a mental health crisis, something along those lines, they can fill out a form and they will be put on the do not sell list for firearms. This is a temporary solution. They will be on the list for at least 30 days and up to 180 days. At 180 days, they can refile to be put back onto the list. Like I said, it's passed in other states. It's passed in red states. And to be frank, like it's not going to save thousands upon thousands of lives, but if it can save a handful of lives a year, I think that's worth it. And I think that it's something that I've talked to some pro Second Amendment, pro gun rights individuals, and I think that it's something that people across the aisle can also get on board with. So hopefully it's something that we can get some traction on. The last one is what I call my kidfluencer bill. So it's a version of something that passed in Illinois last year. So you might be familiar with the term influencer, online influencer. So, you know, people on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc., that make videos and then get money for those videos. Well, if you're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc., you've probably seen videos where people will film their kids, so people under the age of 18 that are in their care, and then monetize those videos. Unfortunately, a lot of the times when people are making content around their kids, the kids are not compensated for that content. They do not see any of the money that is made from that content. So under this legislation, if a minor appears in a certain amount of the content, so it's set at 30% of the content, then the parents are required to set aside a portion of the money that they receive from that content, put it into a trust, and then that trust is paid out when the minor is either emancipated or turns 18. This will allow for minors to not be exploited and allow minors to actually reap the benefits of their work, because frankly, it is work, when they are used for content by their parents. So those are what I am planning to file, and I'm happy to answer any questions about those or anything else about the session.
All right, I'm going over to the chat. Nancy Copenhaver asks, could you file, either one of you, I'm guessing, a standalone bill that would allow the student ID from a state institution to be allowed for voting? Good question. Instead of a driver's license, because as we know, we've talked about at other weeks of our meeting, a lot of young people don't have driver's licenses. They don't care, they don't drive, they don't have them, and now they need that photo ID.
And the work that I'm doing on the bill that I want to file, speaking to some legal people, it's, well, first of all, the history on that is a lot of the discussion is that college IDs don't have an expiration date.
Expiration date. Mhm.
And, you know, I think we all find that frustrating. It's not like your personhood expires, right? You're still the same person, whether the idea is expired or not. But a possible approach, instead of specifically talking about college IDs, is to try to establish the standards for photo ID and then encourage universities to follow that standard to make their student IDs work. And so that may or may not be, because like I said, this is some of the talking that we've been doing back and forth with some of the people in drafting and our legal experts on what's the best way to approach this.
Yeah, and Dave Taylor reminds us, I'd forgotten about this. The way they wrote that photo ID law is if they remove the photo ID, we also lose the no excuse early voting absentee period where anybody can early vote. So that was kind of what they did to sweeten the pot so that people would agree for the photo ID. If you get rid of the photo ID, no more early voting. So it's kind of a poison pill, I think is what you call it. So yeah, thanks for that reminder. Couple of nice comments you can read. Kathy Jensen asks of Doug, please clarify who can request to be on that do not sell to list. So who can make the request? What entities to get a person who's struggling on that don't sell them a firearm list?
Yeah, so the way that it is written is the individual would go in and request for themselves not to be on the list. So it's not a traditional red flag law where like you can go in and request your like family member or friend or whatever be put on the list. It's for individuals. So like I could go in and say, I would like to be put on this list so that people do not sell me a firearm.
Wow. Okay.
So it's very clear right now to me that there's not enough of an appetite in the legislature for a traditional red flag law, right? But with something like this, if someone is going through a mental health struggle and like they know, you know, that they know that like that moment might come that they go into Bass Pro or whatever to purchase that firearm, they can be proactive and ensure that that option is taken away from them.
Tillamas, one of you has your hand up. Let's go to you next.
Interesting bills that you're thinking of filing. We haven't had too many interesting bills pass the state legislature in the last year or two. I hope some of these make it. I assume you've been in some communication with other members of the legislature, including some on the dark side. Are there any of these bills in particular that look as if they would attract enough Republican support to have a strong chance of passage for both of you?
I think Kathy is
So Kathy, you're mute. But the thing is, you're not. Like on my end, it doesn't look like you are. So I'm not sure what's happening.
Could be a microphone issue.
Can't hear you.
No.
No.
There you go. Now we got you. It's okay.
You still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just can't see any of you now. I've lost my screen. All I was saying was, I know I'm going to sound like a pessimist, but I am very doubtful that we will see many, if any, Democrat bills make it to a committee. But what I am optimistic, and I don't know if Doug feels the same way, is that by having these written as bills, we can be trying to talk to the other side to garner support if we can get them as amendments onto other bills. And so that's where my optimism is that potentially pieces of these could eventually find their way, but probably not many.
I would definitely agree with Kathy. I don't think it's necessarily being a pessimist. I think it's being a realist and, you know, understanding the situation. I also think it should be noted, like, we are in an election year, right? So like people are being very careful about the things that they say, especially those that are running for higher office. But I do think that, you know, the way that these bills are written, I would point again to my firearms bill. I think that it's written in a way that I have heard from people on the other side of the aisle that they are agreeable, not, 100 of them, right? Because I haven't spoken to every single Republican, so I can't confidently say whether or not there's, 100 Republicans willing to support this. But from what I'm hearing from the people that I am talking to, the language is agreeable enough for those people that if it were to be put on as an amendment onto some larger bill, they would not have a problem with it being there. So, as usual, like Kathy said, as Democrats, our best option is generally to try to get things on as amendments because it's really difficult for us to get committee hearings.
There's some interesting points of order about the IDs and why the IDs are a problem in the chat. If you want to get into the weeds on that, I'm not going to read them, just comments, so you can read them if you want. But there is a question over there, which was a question I had. Doug, can you talk to us a little more specifically about how that motorcycle bill works and like how it's protecting motorcyclists? I don't ride a motorcycle, so I don't really have a clear understanding.
So it would allow for a maneuver that's called filtering, right? So when you are like stopped on like a highway, right? The motorcycle, instead of like sitting directly behind your car, would be able to pull up in between the two cars, right? Essentially, like, because one of the biggest problems, like one of the ways that motorcyclists are most likely to be killed in a wreck is when they are rear-ended at a stop, right? Yeah. Because people are not paying attention, they're on their phones, whatever is happening.
Just don't
right?
see them. Yeah.
And if I'm sitting in my RAV4 and I get rear-ended, I might get whiplash. I have to like pay to fix my car. If you're sitting on a motorcycle and you get rear-ended, you die. Right. So it would allow for that maneuver. And I think Dave Wraithel put in the chat, like it is a practice in some other states, some other countries, and they have found that it does reduces rear end collisions and it reduces overall fatalities for motorcyclists.
Dave Taylor says it also helps relieve traffic jams. If you have motorcycles, it tightens up the line, I guess.
Yeah.
Because the motorcyclists are doubling up instead of taking a whole space. Interesting. All right, I'm looking. Other questions? You had lots of questions last week. Anybody? You questioned out? David?
I was trying to write it down here, but
Okay.
so far.
Oh, I'm sorry, David Mallory.
So far, what I've heard this weekend last was pre-filed bills that individuals have filed or are planning to file, but I haven't heard anything about. I don't remember what the term is. Supporting a bill, like Kathy and Doug get together, or Doug get together with some Republicans and have other people sign things together. During this stage of the legislative process, is it primarily just someone presenting a bill and later you find people that will back you and want to co-sign the bill?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
But do you want to start this time?
Sure. So right now, so when you're like working on a bill, during like the time in between session, you are communicating with other people, you're communicating with other reps, you're communicating with other interest groups, you're communicating with a plethora of people to work on this like legislation, right? As smart as I think that I am, and as smart as Kathy is, we are not the knowers of all or the supreme intelligence. So it's important that we tap into other people, get ideas from other people to help craft the legislation. As far as co-sponsoring is considered, right now it's I file a bill, and then once session starts, Kathy can go in and put her co-sponsored tag on it and say, I support this. As far as the maneuvering and making of the sausage, if you will, is considered, people are discussing with other reps, trying to get an idea of what language is supportable, what language is not supportable, making modifications to language stuff at this point. And that will continue throughout session.
much to add to that. But we'll say that as we become more senior legislators, I suppose be a good way to phrase that, we might have opportunities to file the same legislation, say with a senator, or maybe get somebody from the other side to file the same legislation, and working on those relationships. But I think it's going to take a little more than just one session to get people that are ready to do that.
Yeah, but you got to start somewhere, so that's great that you all are starting it. Kathy Jensen asked if Kathy Steinhoff could talk more about the NRA language in the safe gun storage bill. Just wanted to hear more specifics, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I got this idea by looking at the NRA website and seeing what the NRA website suggested for training and storage. And their language is very specific. I wish I had it written down in front of me, but they talk about how you can tell that they're very, they don't want to say that there's one size fits all type of storage, but they say what is, makes the most sense for that individual. So I'm thinking about trying to have the bill be just mimicking their phrasing with a list of some of the storage options that the NRA website talks about. But they also talk a lot about making sure that the firearms don't get in the hands of the wrong people. So thinking about maybe some punitive measures on the side of if their weapons get in the hands of the wrong people. So I'm really just mirroring NRA's language and trying to put a little bit of teeth in our law about it.
Yeah, and thinking that will go farther if you're using their words. How can they push back, right? They said it. Yeah, that's smart thinking. I'm not sure whose hand has been up the longest. Dave Rathel, let's go to you next.
When it was briefly quiet there, I was going to relay some information. And it's not to, rain on your hopes and efforts, but the MRCC people had their legislative agenda priority meeting yesterday, and the fractious nature of the Republican Party in the Senate is just going to pretty much grind everything to a halt. And specifically, Bill Eigel is expected to grandstand every opportunity he has. Okay, so now we've got a prediction. We can now see what happens in the next 4 months. And certainly if it goes on, I would hope we're organized enough to make it a propaganda issue. I mean, nothing is going to happen because they're all preening. That's the word I got yesterday. Just thought I'd share it.
Interesting. David Robinson, I think your hand had actually been up longer, but then it looked like you were out of your chair, so I didn't call you out.
I had to go put my peanut brittle in a box.
Okay.
I'm kind of getting off the subject, which is pre-filed bills, but it's something that's important to our organization. We'd like to know about your campaign plans and your your prediction about how things will shape up in the election. I'm wanting you to look ahead, not just to this term, but the campaign coming that, of course, we want to be part of, and what are the future prospects? And we've only been there not even one session, but what are the future prospects for us Democrats in our state government? It's been pretty grim for a while.
I feel like the last time around we were making progress myself.
Well, we talked about this a little with the other candidates, and I like that kind of the best part.
Doug, do you want to go first this time?
Well, yeah. So as I had announced via the Missourian, et cetera, I'm not going to be running in 24. I'm stepping aside for mental health reasons. But I will say that Greg Bush has announced that he will be running. I think that he would make a great candidate, great bet, would do great work for Columbia. Getting to the second part of your question, which is, the outlook and stuff like that. I guess I would just say to remember that, big ships turn slowly, right? This isn't a scenario where in 24, we're going to pick up 50 seats as Democrats, right? That's not a thing that's going to happen. It's about, picking up as many seats as you can in every election, holding the seats that you do have, and gaining power that way. Breaking the supermajority this cycle would be phenomenal. What we saw in the first session was that, you know, when we stick together, like even with the small numbers that we have, we can have an impact. That we can flex our muscles to try to get some things done. That the fractious nature of the Republican Party, specifically in the House, means that there are going to be things where the more center-right Republicans need our votes to pass things. So being strategic, finding ways to utilize that power and flex our muscles where we can is great. Leadership right now in the House with Crystal is phenomenal and great at doing that. And I have no doubt that the individuals who have, you know, tossed their hat in the ring to be in leadership in the next go around will be just as effective at doing that.
Great. Kathy, do you want to tag in on that one? You're good.
Yeah, I'm sad that we won't have Doug continuing with us, but I'm really, really proud of you for doing the work that you need to. That's right for you, Doug. And I know there's great things in the future for you. I do plan to run for re-election again, and I am really hoping that I don't have an opponent, but we will, you know, time will tell about that. I think Doug had some really great insight into what's going on. I will tell you from my perspective, as I go around the state with some of the, you know, visiting some of the events and other House members, I'm very excited about many of the new candidates that are coming in. Of course, it'd be great to have more Dems, you know, having our numbers increase is important, but it's, I think, just as important to have the right people in these roles. We need to have people that are really dynamic and people that have good ideas and are willing to, you know, willing to really push our system in a positive direction. And I'm optimistic about that.
Cool. Mari has her hand up.
Yeah, my question has to do with, we've talked about the bills that you'll be filing that we would, in the ideal world, want to see go through, but I'm interested in what you anticipate you're going to need to play defense on, particularly in the area of education, but any other areas. You know, what do you think might come out of this upcoming fractious session that we need to be fighting against?
Well, you said education, and open enrollment is very, very likely to happen this year. So as far as playing defense with that, it's a matter of kind of shaving off the rough edges. It's a matter of trying to make it a little palatable. And it almost passed last year. And the way that it got to the end, it really was not as bad a bill as it had started out. So I think that that's where we go on the defensive, is to just really try to tame these bills a little bit to make them easier for us to handle. Because even that is a victory.
True.
Sorry, I would say I definitely do see the education bills and those issues. I have skimmed over the bills that have been pre-filed. Obviously, I haven't read all of them because there's several hundred, and you know, I'm only human. But we are going to see more attacks on the IP process. Those are coming up. We're going to see continued attacks on reproductive rights, attacks on LGBTQ folks, attacks on books and teachers and stuff like that. All the culture war stuff is going to be propped back up. There are a couple of HJRs that were filed that I saw that deal with term limit issues and kind of like modifying the term limit stuff. There's one that would that caught my eye that's been stuck in my brain, that would reduce the House of Representatives down to 103 members, which would, you know, make each representative a little bit less able to represent each individual person. So it's going to be a lot of what we saw last year. But like I said, being that it is an election year, I would expect a lot more fervent rhetoric from individuals that are, specifically running for higher office.
Tillamus?
We thank you both very much for serving in the State House. Thank you. It is fraught with some frustrations, of course. Being in a supermajority is not the greatest path to joy. But let's focus on the other side for a moment. What in your representativeness or your official role has given you most pleasure or satisfaction in this year past, or now looking back on it?
Do you want to go first, Kathy, or do you want me to go first? So I would say, you have the understanding that when you're in a super minority, your ability to propose and pass legislation is definitely limited, right? But you can have a profound impact on people and individuals. And there's a lot of people that are coming in and out of your office and talking to you. And there's a lot of people that are, advocating for things that I agree with, that when they go to other offices are met with hostility, are met with anger, are met with vitriol, and just overall have a bad time when they go into those offices. Anyone that has done a lobby day for like Planned Parenthood or the ACLU or anything like that knows what I'm talking about, right? But being able to provide a safe place for them to come and be heard, and making sure that those individuals that come into the building, and even those individuals across the state who feel unheard, who feel like they're, the people in that building are working to do them harm, make sure that they know that there are people that are fighting for them, there are people that are hearing them, and that they're not alone in their struggles.
I would say so. It's just such a cool experience. I mean, it's such an honor to be representing people. And I have spent a lot of my time after session finding out everything I can, even about just Boone County, things I had no idea about. I am touring nonprofits all the time. Being on the budget committee, when you're looking at all those line items, you see little acronyms and you're not really sure what they are. And it's like a puzzle trying to put all those pieces together. Like what's the difference between Head Start and First Chance and Parents as Teachers and all of the different ways that these mechanisms work together. And being able to walk into that building every day, just knowing that I'm representing all of my neighbors, it is really a fascinating and exciting experience. I do think of it almost like it's a puzzle, and I'm somebody who likes to do Sudokus and things like that. So you're right that when you think about how much our vote really impacts change and some of the awful things that are coming out of that building, but there's a lot of good that's happening as well. And so it's fun to be a part of that.
Great. I'm going back over to the chat. Kathy, a while back, asked for a clarification from Doug. She asked, did you say that now there are laws or regulations against renters trying to do something about problems with their housing? Is that what she said?
So right now, the Fair Housing Act at the federal level protects individuals from being discriminated against in their search for housing based on sex, gender, race, religion, etc. We are out of compliance with that. We do not have a law in the books that explicitly protects people from that. The Missouri Human Rights Act does include housing as a protected activity, right? Like the seeking of housing, but not for all of those classes. The law that I am proposing would bring us into compliance with the federal Fair Housing Act, by protecting people who are searching for housing in all of those classes, so that you wouldn't be able to be discriminated against based on age or race or religion or familial status or anything along those lines. So right now there are, there's nothing that's like explicitly on the book saying, renters can't sue, but there are definitely more hurdles that there need to be, and then also looking at like people looking to buy a home, right? There's more hurdles that there needs to be, and there's not as many protections as there should be.
That's what I was gonna say. If it's in law and then they feel that they've been wronged, they have something they can point to and say this is illegal.
Yeah.
And yeah, that makes sense, I guess. And then Diane had a kind of a follow-up on that, so I'll go ahead and tag it on. Who's opposing this? What's the major opposition to the Fair Housing Bill? Bigots? I mean,
Yeah, bigots. I will say, like, I am not the first person to file this. This has been filed since 2018 after SB 43 in 2017, right? And the rep that had filed it before did not get reelected. So I picked up that baton and started running with it. And hopefully when I am gone, if it doesn't pass this year, someone else picks up that baton and runs with it. I haven't gotten a committee hearing, so I haven't had any specific lobbying organizations or anything come out specifically
with
and
specific
say,
problems with it, yeah.
we don't like this because blank.
Uh-huh.
But to be frank, businesses don't like to be sued. Realtors don't like to be sued. Landlords don't like to be sued. So those organizations, those groups are a lot of the times going to oppose
just kind of anything that's going to give more grounds for suing. That makes sense, I guess.
For them to get sued.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see. Ken Schneeberger asked for just a clarification. What is open enrollment? Kathy, you want to grab that one?
Well, if we're providing public education all across Missouri, then a parent should be able to choose where they educate their child. What that would mean, if it was a really, really loose open enrollment bill, which we have some legislators that's what they want, it would mean that somebody from Columbia Public Schools could take their child and enroll them in Ashland schools. It doesn't, the way that we have been able to pare that bill down, we have limited it in the past years, and I'm not sure I'm explaining this very well, to be that the accepting district has to announce in advance that they are willing to accept students. That makes a big difference. If something passes that just says it's the wild, wild west, I mean, you can imagine the implications it would have. Because now we as Boone County taxpayers that are paying into let's say Columbia Public Schools, we might be forced to take kids from Fulton and Hallsville and Ashland and Sedalia and any place around that wants to bring their kids to Columbia Public Schools. And because schools only 30% of our funding comes from the state level, most of it does come from the local level. As you can imagine, there's a lot of people that are very much against this. But you also can see what's happening. It just contributes to the whole charter school, the whole voucher scheme, the whole thing about let's make education more competitive. And then the part that they're not saying out loud is so that we can kill public education.
Yeah. And so we can vacate schools that are struggling and just kill them altogether instead of helping them perform better.
The bill that will pass on open enrollment, it's probably really going to just impact St. Louis and Kansas City for now, but it's only a matter of time before Columbia and Springfield have a school system in the sizes if we were to allow charter schools to move into this area, then everything's off the table then.
Yeah, and then just the logistics of the tax dollars. I mean, you're exactly right. If you can't support all those extra students, you can't support all the students in the same way if all of a sudden you have this influx of students, but not the tax base that comes along because their taxes are going to Fulton or wherever. Yeah, interesting and bad. Ruth Millage in the chat asks, and I know the answer may be we're not sure because I know Doug said there's hundreds of these and you're only one person, but have either of you seen a bill that would correct the problems with the freeze on the property tax rate for seniors? Any motion on that either of you are aware of?
I have not looked over the bills the way Doug has, so I have not seen any.
Have you noticed?
So I'm looking at the bills that are filed under the House research people are saying has to do with property taxes. I am not immediately seeing anything that has the word seniors in it. But that
There's a
doesn't
bill
mean that
filed by
something.
McCreary. There's a bill been filed by McCreary out of St. Louis in the Senate, and she's got a matching bill in the House. It's the one that the Boone County Commission wants to be passed.
It must not have the word senior in it. They must call it something else.
Yeah.
Pam's got her hand up.
Adrian has one. HB 1939 modifies the senior citizen property tax relief credit.
Okay.
Maybe they filed it under some other heading, Doug, not property. Maybe it's under, who knows what heading it might be under. All right, so it sounds like some people are working on it. Nancy, your hand's up.
I think the one that Adriana has filed has to do with the oh, now I can't think what it's called, circuit breaker, which is a different kind of a tax break for seniors than it deals only with low income seniors and that kind of thing.
Raises the level.
It's a good thing, but it's just kind of two different things.
Okay. All right, I think I'm all caught up on questions in the chat. Does anybody else in the room have additional? Dave, your hand just went back up. Rachel?
Well, I was just, according to Polite, the guy from Sedalia, who's the primary mover of the school choice bill, he describes the opposite situation. It's the people trapped in Columbia schools who want to escape to Ashland and Centralia that he's coming to the rescue for, or of.
Well,
Just so you know, the propaganda war we have. Yeah.
We may have some people that would do that, but the way that the services that we provide for students with special needs, I think we would see a lot of people coming to Columbia. Also,
that makes sense.
You might check out Dave. Doug Ritchie, I just saw, just released a bill on open enrollment that I haven't looked at yet, but I have a feeling it's going to probably be much looser than Brad Pollitt's.
Tillamus.
An issue we haven't addressed at all here, but is on the minds of a great many Missourians, is the problem of healthcare inequity within Missouri. There have had several phases. One, of course, many of our hospitals have closed outside of the major metropolitan areas. Two, access to affordable healthcare is rationed in significant part because many people are not insured or underinsured. Is there any prospect of, by hook or by crook, getting Missouri to address this issue, which is even greater than in many other states?
Well, I will say I do think that this is a bipartisan issue and that there is interest on both sides. Both sides are not happy that we have so many Missourians that are so far away from healthcare. We see a lot of bills coming through that have to do with increasing the role of people like our nurse practitioners and our physician assistants. We also see people, or I hear all the time people talking about regulations around like emergency rooms. So I know that there are a lot of people that know the details far better than I do that are trying to come up with ways to increase that access. But the one thing we have going for us is the fact that both sides of the aisle see this as an issue and want to work on it. Unfortunately, I think sometimes things such as what we see in the news recently with KU wanting to take over the hospital in Kansas City, what upsets me is that feels almost like an emotional trigger issue as opposed to really wanting to make sure that our patients have access. I know when you dig down into the weeds, it is not just emotional, but you hear a lot of the argument is just about whether KU or MU is on that logo, which I think we're missing the point. We need to look past that.
Dave Briefel asks, is that a real issue?
Yes, yes. I'm trying to remember which hospital it was. Is it Truman Medical Center in Kansas City area?
No, it was a Kansas City Medical. I think it was,
Liberty.
I think it was a Kansas City Medical Center.
Okay. I'll pay
And
attention.
it's wanting to merge with Liberty Hospital. Or at
Nancy?
least set up a partnership.
Is that what your hand was up for, or did you have something else you wanted to ask that? Jeff, what would you like to ask?
I know that at the end of last session, the child care tax credit got bogged down, but there was a lot of look at it. I don't know if you think there's a good chance of something like that passing this session.
I feel confident it will pass. I mean, you know, a varied level of confidence, as long as something screwy doesn't happen with somebody just holding the whole place hostage.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's definitely bipartisan support for something like that to go through. But I know I sound like a broken record here, but like election year session, we saw last year and years before that not to talk poorly about the other chamber, but you know, sometimes things get bogged down in the Senate because there's big personalities and a greater ability to actually bog things down. And there's a chance that that could happen again this year. But I do think that there's enough bipartisan support on that issue to get something done if we can actually, you know, do the work.
I'll just add that the way that the bill looked at the end that almost passed, you know, I think probably I'm not alone in this virtual room that we're not crazy about tax credits, and we know how that impacts our future financial stability as a state. However, this is a tax credit I would support. Like I said, I wish we could find a different way to do it. I wish we could just use our budget, but I think that what we will lose from those tax credits will be nothing compared to what we will gain in eventual financial benefits to our state, but also just social benefits to our state. Because when you start taking care of young children, you change the trajectory of so much. I can't even begin to tell you all the different ways that it can improve their health standards, their education standards, their ability to be taxpayers in the future, the whole family unit, their dependence on social services. So to me, that is a tax credit that is well spent.
Okay, any news on the speaker situation?
You tell us.
Nothing that isn't already in the press. We don't have any behind the scenes, or at least I don't. Kathy might have some behind the scenes knowledge that I'm not privy to.
Got to hang
But
out
you
with
know,
Rod Jetton yet?
Hmm?
You get to hang out with Rod Jetton yet?
Not yet. But like it's definitely a mess. It's definitely something that's going to be hanging over, you know, the body during this session. But hopefully it doesn't keep us from getting at least some good things done. So.
All right, it's 12:56. I think we could probably thank our speakers very much for being here and sharing your expertise and your plans with us. We appreciate that very much. I appreciate you giving us such lovely access.
Dave Taylor put something in a quick question in the chat. Is there anyone in line to succeed House Minority Leader Crystal Quaid?
Oh, I didn't even see that one. Thanks for catching it.
It just popped up.
Well, that's an elected position by our caucus. And so far, there's a couple reps who have stated publicly that they're interested in that position, but it isn't like officially beginning yet, that process.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll just say thank you very much. You two are welcome to hang out. If you have the things to do, feel free to tap out, and I'm going to hand off to Pam, and she's going to do our weekly announcements.
Before we jump into that, I'd like to say a huge thank you to our president, Sarah Catlin, for presiding over this motley group this entire year. Thank you.
It's been my honor, and I'll probably be subbing a little bit. I know Al already said there's a couple dates that he'll be done, and now that I'm settled in my new job, there's not that worry that I was having where I was missing out on job opportunities just because I was being seen as too partisan, whatever that means.
Well, I think we can thank also the entire board that served us well this year. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
Sarah, good luck on that job. That's an
Thanks.
important contribution to the community.
I'm loving it so far. Okay, I'm going to mute myself here. Pam talks.
Okay,